Have you ever imagined that living alone, truly alone, without anyone by your side, might actually be the doorway to the deepest kind of freedom and peace you've ever known? In today's fast-paced, noisy world, the thought of being by ourselves can feel uncomfortable, maybe even frightening. We worry we'll feel empty, isolated, or left behind. But what if, in that very silence we fear, we discover something extraordinary, our truest self? Welcome to Light of Buddhism. Today, we begin a powerful journey inward, one that starts not in chaos or achievement, but in stillness. Living alone isn't about running away from the world. It's about coming home to yourself. Imagine stepping into a quiet, empty room. At first, it feels strange. There's no sound, no conversation, no distractions. But then something unexpected begins to happen. You start to hear the rhythm of your own breath. You notice your thoughts, your emotions, the subtle stirrings of your heart that are usually drowned out by the noise of everyday life. You begin to feel awake. The Buddha once taught that peace doesn't come from outside, it begins within. Silence isn't emptiness, it's spaciousness, like a blank canvas waiting for your colors. When we live alone, we're offered a rare opportunity to slow down, to listen deeply, and to reconnect with what matters most. This is where our journey begins, not with fear of solitude, but with curiosity. What might you learn in the quiet? What strength might you uncover when there's no one else to lean on? In the next part of our journey, we'll face a familiar feeling, loneliness. But instead of pushing it away, we'll explore how even loneliness can become a powerful teacher on the path to healing and connection. 1. Loneliness as a teacher, not a threat. Most of us know the feeling, that sudden ache in the chest when the room feels too quiet, that heavy silence that makes you wonder if something's missing. Loneliness, it's one of the most human experiences there is. And when you first begin living alone, it might show up more often than you expect. But here's the truth. Loneliness doesn't have to be the enemy. What if it's trying to show you something? What if, instead of running from it, you listened to what it had to say? At Light of Buddhism, we believe that loneliness isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that you're human. And more importantly, that you're alive. Even the Buddha spent long periods in solitude, not to escape connection, but to deepen it. With himself, with life, and with all living beings. So how do we begin to shift our view of loneliness? First, we stop fighting it. When we resist it, it grows stronger. But when we sit with it, gently, like an old friend, something begins to soften. We see that it's not permanent. It comes and it goes, just like every other feeling. Like clouds drifting across the sky, loneliness passes too. Through meditation, we can learn to observe our loneliness without judging it. We breathe into it. We allow it. And slowly, we start to notice what's underneath it. The desire to connect, to be seen, to feel love. And that's not something to fear. That's something to honor. One powerful practice during times of loneliness is loving kindness meditation, also known as metta. You start by offering kindness to yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I feel loved. Then, as your heart opens, you send that same wish out to others, even to people you may never meet. It's a reminder that we are all in some way walking through our own version of loneliness. You are never truly alone in how you feel. And while solitude teaches us to befriend ourselves, we still need connection. The Buddha spoke about Sangha, community, as one of the pillars of the spiritual path. Today, that might mean reaching out to a friend, joining a group, or even connecting through videos like this. Meaningful connection doesn't require a crowd, just honesty, presence, and care. Loneliness can also become a doorway to creativity. In the quiet, we may find ourselves picking up a pen, painting something messy and true, or simply sitting with music that reflects how we feel. These moments aren't distractions, they're expressions. They're how we begin to understand ourselves and reach out to others, heart to heart. So the next time loneliness visits, pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Sit with it, breathe with it, learn from it. Because sometimes what feels like emptiness is really just space. Space for something beautiful to grow. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore how to take that inner space and begin building something solid. A life of self-sufficiency rooted in mindfulness, simplicity, and joy. 2. Self-sufficiency as a spiritual practice. Learning to live alone is not just about surviving on your own. It's about thriving from within. It's about discovering that you are capable of caring for yourself with the same love and attention you've so often given to others. This isn't simply about cooking meals or paying bills, though those are important. It's about reclaiming your power, finding purpose in small tasks, and turning everyday routines into rituals of self-respect. In the teachings of the Buddha, the path toward liberation is deeply personal. No one else can walk it for you. And in many ways, self-sufficiency is a reflection of that teaching. It's the art of becoming your own steady presence, your own caretaker, your own guide. At first, the basics may feel unfamiliar. Making all your own meals, managing your finances, maintaining your space. It can feel overwhelming. But every small act of care builds confidence. When you cook for yourself, you're not just feeding your body, you're nourishing your soul. When you keep your space clean and peaceful, you're saying to yourself, I matter, my peace matters. These simple mindful choices become part of a deeper practice. The Buddha spoke often of right livelihood, living and working in ways that are ethical, sustainable, and beneficial to others. When we manage our money thoughtfully, support ourselves honestly, and live within our means, we align with that teaching. We begin to live not just independently, but with integrity. Self-sufficiency also means becoming emotionally self-aware. We start to notice what lifts us up, what drains us, and how to regulate our energy. It means creating routines that support our well-being, not rigid schedules, but gentle rhythms that give shape to our day. Maybe it's a morning walk, a quiet moment with tea, a journal session at night. These are not luxuries, they are lifelines. And as we grow stronger in our independence, we may also notice the urge to explore, to try new hobbies, learn new skills, or return to passions we set aside. Self-sufficiency isn't just about maintenance, it's about creation. It's the joy of discovering who you are when no one else is defining you. But let's not confuse independence with isolation. True self-sufficiency includes the wisdom to know when to ask for help. The Buddha called this the middle way, not too much attachment, not too much detachment, balance. You can be whole on your own and still be part of something greater. Living alone is a chance to step into your own power, gently, day by day. It's an invitation to take responsibility not as a burden, but as a path to freedom. And as you continue to grow, you'll begin to see that self-sufficiency isn't just practical, it's profoundly spiritual. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore what happens when we stop striving and start simply being, as we begin to discover the quiet joy of inner peace. 3. The quiet joy of inner peace. What does peace really feel like? Not the kind we get when everything finally goes our way, or when the world around us happens to be quiet, but the kind of peace that hums beneath the surface, steady, calm, untouched by what's happening outside of us. That's the peace we begin to discover when we live alone, when the outer noise fades and the inner space opens up. At Light of Buddhism, we believe that inner peace isn't something we earn. It's something we uncover. It's already within us, always has been, but it takes silence, solitude, and gentle awareness to see it clearly. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of retreat, stepping back from the chaos of life, not to escape it, but to understand it more clearly. When we live alone, we are gifted a kind of retreat every day, a chance to create a sacred space where we can breathe, reflect, and come home to ourselves. One of the most powerful tools on this path is meditation. Sitting in stillness, eyes closed or gently focused, we learn to witness the mind instead of getting lost in it. We observe our thoughts like clouds in the sky, some light, some stormy, but all just passing through. We don't have to react. We don't have to fix. We just have to be. And that, in itself, is peace. Peace also lives in the small things. The way morning light touches the floor, the smell of a warm meal, the rhythm of your breath as you fall asleep. These moments aren't dramatic, but they're sacred. When we live alone, we have the space to notice them, and in noticing, we return to presence. Creating a peaceful environment supports this inner stillness. Maybe it's a tidy corner for meditation, a few houseplants, or simply keeping your space uncluttered. When your surroundings are calm, your mind often follows. But peace isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about honoring what feels good to your spirit. And as we grow more rooted in peace, something magical happens. We stop needing the approval of others to feel okay. We stop chasing the next achievement or the next distraction. We begin to trust ourselves. We learn to live more slowly, more mindfully, and more in tune with what matters. Even life's changes, the ones we fear most, begin to lose their edge, because true peace doesn't come from control. It comes from acceptance. The Buddha taught that change is the only constant. When we learn to flow with it rather than resist it, we open ourselves to a deeper kind of joy, the kind that doesn't disappear when life gets hard. Inner peace is not a destination, it's a practice, a quiet return to the present moment again and again. And living alone gives us the sacred space to make that practice part of who we are. In the next part of our journey, we'll talk about how this peace becomes a foundation, helping us adapt to life's inevitable changes and challenges with strength and grace. 4. Growing through change, adapting to the flow of life. Change is one of the few things we can count on in life, and yet it often catches us off guard. A new season, a shift in circumstances, a difficult decision. When we live alone, we meet these changes face to face, without distraction. And while that might sound intimidating, It's also one of the greatest gifts of solitude, the chance to grow from the inside out. At Light of Buddhism, we believe that solitude doesn't isolate us from life, it prepares us for it. When we're not constantly swept up in other people's expectations or noise, we learn how we respond to change. We learn how to bend without breaking. And just like a tree that strengthens its roots during a storm, we too grow stronger through life's twists and turns. The Buddha taught that everything is impermanent: our emotions, our possessions, our roles, even our relationships. Clinging to what we wish would stay the same often brings suffering. But when we start to embrace change as a natural part of being alive, we begin to suffer less. We stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" Living alone places us right at the heart of this lesson. Without someone else to rely on for every decision or solution, we're invited to step into our own strength. Maybe it's figuring out how to fix something at home. Maybe it's navigating emotional ups and downs with self-compassion. Each moment becomes a chance to adapt, to find our balance even when the ground beneath us shifts. And adaptation doesn't mean just surviving. It means becoming more alive. It might mean trying new things, taking on challenges you used to avoid, or simply learning to trust your instincts. This kind of growth doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it's as quiet as realizing you can handle more than you thought. Sometimes it's as subtle as changing a routine that no longer serves you. But just as important as learning to stand on your own is knowing when to reach out. True strength includes softness. It includes connection. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Even in solitude, we are never truly alone. We're part of a larger whole. The Buddha's teachings remind us that community, or sangha, is essential to our path, especially during times of change. So whether you're navigating a life transition, dealing with unexpected emotions, or just learning to adjust to the rhythms of living alone, know this: you are growing. Every challenge is shaping you. Every quiet moment is preparing you. You are becoming more resilient, more present, and more in tune with the flow of life. In the next part, we'll look at how, even in solitude, we can nurture meaningful relationships, and how social connection can be a vital part of the journey to inner peace. 5. Staying connected while being alone. One of the biggest myths about living alone is that it means cutting ourselves off from others. But the truth is, solitude doesn't have to mean isolation. In fact, it can be the perfect space to deepen our relationships, to reach out with more intention, to connect from a place of wholeness rather than need. At Light of Buddhism, we believe that being alone gives us the clarity to see what kinds of relationships truly nourish us. It allows us to move away from superficial interactions and move closer to the kind of connection that feels real, safe, and supportive. The Buddha emphasized the importance of sangha, community, as one of the pillars of spiritual life. And while your community may look different when you live alone, it's still just as vital. It might be a small circle of friends who check in with you regularly. It might be family members who understand your quiet nature. It might be an online community, a spiritual group, or even just a friend you share tea and honest conversations with once a week. When we live alone, we often become more intentional about how we connect. We might send that thoughtful message instead of scrolling endlessly. We might invite someone over for dinner and create a space that feels warm and present. In these moments, connection becomes more than just socializing. It becomes sacred. And it's not just about maintaining old relationships. It's also about opening ourselves to new ones. Maybe you join a book club, attend a meditation group, or volunteer for a cause that matters to you. These spaces become more than just activities. They become lifelines. They remind us that we're part of something greater, even as we cultivate a rich inner life on our own. But connection also begins within. The more we learn to enjoy our own company, the more authentically we show up for others. We listen more deeply. We share more openly. We love more freely. Because we're no longer trying to fill a void, we're offering from a place of fullness. And let's not forget, quality matters more than quantity. You don't need dozens of friendships to feel connected. Even just one or two deeply supportive relationships can carry you through life's hardest moments. The Buddha himself had a small circle of close disciples, not a crowd, but a family of the heart. So while you may live alone, your heart doesn't have to be. Your words, your actions, your presence, all of these can continue to build bridges, even from the quiet of your home. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore something solitude gives us in abundance: freedom. Not just freedom from distractions, but the freedom to be fully, beautifully yourself. 6. The freedom of living authentically. There's a special kind of freedom that comes with living alone, one that's hard to describe until you've felt it. It's not just the freedom to choose what music plays, what time you eat dinner, or whether you want to talk to anyone today. It's the freedom to be exactly who you are, without performing, pleasing, or adjusting for anyone else. At Light of Buddhism, we believe this freedom is sacred. It's not a license to withdraw from life, but an invitation to live more truthfully within it. When you're alone, you start to hear your own voice again, not the voice of your parents, your friends, your partner, or society. Your voice. What do you actually enjoy? What do you truly believe? What rhythm suits your soul? Living alone gives you the space to explore those questions, to make choices that align with your values, to set your own schedule, create your own rituals, and define your days according to what feels right, not what's expected. This freedom might feel unfamiliar at first. Many of us have spent so much time adapting to others that we forget who we are underneath it all. But in solitude, you get to peel back those layers, gently, with compassion, and rediscover the person you've always been becoming. Maybe it's choosing to slow down instead of constantly rushing. Maybe it's letting go of perfection and embracing creativity, messiness, or rest. Maybe it's finding the courage to express your truth, knowing that your life is yours to live. The Buddha taught that liberation begins not by changing the world, but by changing the way we see ourselves within it. True freedom isn't just about having no obligations. It's about knowing that your choices come from a place of inner alignment, not fear, not pressure, not guilt. And with that freedom comes self-trust. You begin to believe in your ability to shape your life, to set boundaries, to say yes to what feeds you and no to what drains you. Over time, your life becomes a reflection of your deepest values, not a reaction to other people's demands. You also begin to see that freedom isn't selfish, it's generous. Because when you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Your presence becomes more honest, your relationships more sincere. You start showing up not as a version of yourself, but as the real thing. This is the beauty of solitude. It doesn't just free your schedule, it frees your soul. In the next part of our journey, we'll take that freedom one step further. learning how to cultivate something even more precious: contentment. The kind that doesn't depend on having more, but on being enough. 7. Cultivating contentment, the art of enough. What if happiness wasn't something you had to chase, but something you could feel right now, exactly as things are? Living alone gives us a rare and powerful chance to explore this question, to pause the endless pursuit of more, and instead begin to discover the quiet richness of enough. Not because we've settled, but because we've learned how to truly see what's already here. At Light of Buddhism, we understand contentment as a spiritual art, one the Buddha spoke of often. In his teachings, he reminded us that craving is the root of suffering. It's not the lack of things that makes us unhappy. It's the belief that something else, something out there, will finally complete us. But what if we already have enough? When you live alone, you begin to notice the beauty in simple moments, the stillness of the morning, the rhythm of making your own meal, the comfort of a warm drink in your favorite chair. These moments aren't dramatic, but they are deeply human and deeply healing. Gratitude becomes a daily practice, not a performance. You start saying thank you for the little things, not because life is perfect, but because you've learned to see its quiet gifts. The sunlight on the wall, the sound of your own breath, the fact that right now you are alive and safe. Contentment also comes from within. It's the peace that grows when we stop comparing, stop judging, and stop demanding that life look a certain way. You begin to measure your days not by how much you got done, but by how present you were, how kind you were to yourself, how fully you lived, even in stillness. Of course, contentment doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It doesn't mean ignoring pain or giving up on dreams. What it means is this: you stop letting your joy depend on outcomes. You stop waiting for some future moment to begin living. And over time, this mindset shifts everything. You find that you don't need to fill every moment, or accumulate more things, or prove your worth. You begin to trust that you, just as you are enough. In solitude, this practice becomes natural. There are fewer distractions, fewer comparisons. You begin to realize that peace isn't hidden in the next accomplishment. It's in your next breath. And with that awareness comes a soft, enduring joy. So you simplify, you let go of what no longer serves you, you make space, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and in that space, contentment takes root. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore what happens when we take this inner peace and point it towards something even deeper. A spiritual exploration of self, life, and the universe itself. 8. Spiritual exploration in solitude. There comes a moment in solitude, after the noise has settled, after the loneliness has softened, after the peace has taken root, when a deeper question arises: who am I, really? Not in the roles we play, not in the expectations we carry, but in the stillness beneath it all. This is where solitude becomes more than personal. It becomes spiritual. At Light of Buddhism, we see living alone as an invitation to enter this sacred inquiry. When the distractions fall away, what remains is not emptiness, but a vast, quiet space in which the soul can speak. In Buddhist tradition, this is the beginning of vipassana, deep insight, not into the world outside, but into the very nature of your own mind and heart. The Buddha himself left behind palace life, privilege, and noise, not out of rejection, but to find the truth of his own existence. In the forest, in silence, he sat, he breathed, he watched, and through solitude, he awakened. You don't need a forest. You don't need a temple. Your home, your room, your breath, these can all become sacred spaces for awakening. It begins simply, a quiet moment in the morning, a few deep breaths before bed, lighting a candle, sitting in stillness, reading a sacred text, reflecting on what brings your spirit alive. Solitude offers the rare freedom to explore spirituality on your own terms. You're no longer bound by external rituals or social pressure. You're free to explore what resonates with you, whether it's Buddhist teachings, mindful movement, nature, music, or the profound quiet of just being. Creating a small altar, a meditation corner, or even just a window where you sit and look at the sky, these become acts of reverence, not toward something outside of you, but toward the mystery of life itself, which lives within you. Spirituality in solitude also deepens our connection to the world. It may sound paradoxical, but the more we turn inward, the more we feel connected to everything around us, the earth, the seasons, the people we meet. Compassion grows, gratitude expands. We begin to see the divine not only in ourselves, but in all beings. And most of all, we realize that the journey isn't about arriving at answers. It's about becoming more honest in our questions. It's about cultivating the courage to sit in mystery, not with fear, but with wonder. Solitude doesn't separate us from the sacred. It brings us closer to it. It clears the space for clarity, for reflection, and for transformation. In this way, living alone becomes a spiritual path in itself, one that leads not away from life, but straight into its heart. In the final part of our journey, we'll explore how all of this, the peace, the growth, the freedom, and the awakening, come together into a life of true empowerment and independence. 9. Living empowered. Becoming the author of your own life. When you first start living alone, it can feel like stepping into the unknown. There's no one else to shape your days, to fill your silence, or to define who you are. But as time passes, that unknown begins to transform. It becomes possibility. It becomes presence. It becomes At Light of Buddhism, we believe that true empowerment doesn't come from control. It comes from clarity. And living alone gives you the space to find it. With every decision you make, every challenge you face, and every quiet evening you spend in reflection, you are writing your story. Page by page, moment, you begin to trust your own voice. You start making choices, not out of habit, fear, or obligation, but from alignment, from what feels true, from what brings peace. You learn to cook for yourself, not just to eat, but to nourish. You manage your time and your finances not out of pressure, but as an act of care. And you show up for yourself, day after day, as someone worthy of effort, love, and respect. That is empowerment. The Buddha taught that freedom begins when we take responsibility for our own suffering and our own joy, not by blaming ourselves, but by recognizing our agency. When we live alone, we begin to see how much power we have to shape the quality of our lives, not through big, dramatic changes, but through small, intentional acts. And it's not just about self-reliance. True empowerment includes connection. It includes the wisdom to ask for support when needed, to lean on community when the burden is heavy, and to offer our strength to others in return. This is the balance. This is the middle way. You may also begin to rediscover your passions. Maybe you pick up a hobby you once loved, or take a bold step toward a dream you've been quietly holding. Living alone gives you the freedom and the quiet courage to pursue what matters to you, not just what's expected of you. And as you move through life with this grounded independence, something shifts. You no longer look outside yourself for validation. You become the author of your own path. You stop asking for permission and start listening for direction from within. This is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a life lived awake, intentional and free, empowered not by circumstance, but by presence, by awareness, by compassion. So if you are walking this path of solitude, whether just beginning or deep into the journey, know this: you are not behind. You are not missing anything. You are exactly where you need to be. And from here, everything opens. Thank you for walking with us on this journey. Whether you're just beginning to live alone or you've walked this path for a while, we hope these reflections reminded you of one simple truth. You are not alone. Within the quiet, there is wisdom. Within solitude, there is strength. And within you, there is a peaceful, powerful presence that's always been there, just waiting to be rediscovered. As the Buddha taught, the path to freedom begins not in some distant place, but right here, in your breath, your awareness, your life as it is. If today's video brought you peace or insight, we invite you to share it with someone who might need it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more gentle, soul-centered teachings rooted in mindfulness and compassion. And until next time, may you continue to walk your path with clarity, courage, and kindness, on your own terms and in your own time. From all of us at Light of Buddhism, Namaste.